Yeah, I think the examples in the book are very helpful, actually. So I'm glad that you chose to go that way. I think they're very specific. Uh, Not as specific as if it's one-on-one, but it's a good start.
Yes, that's interesting to say, but I'm going to address the specificity first. If you need more specificity in this book, it's more conceptual. And here I'm giving you an example of how to generate a state very shortly, very quickly. Why? Because in the first book, Creating Ease at Life, I have gone over and presented to you 6 different states. I'm walking you slowly, step by step, in writing and in audio on how to generate a state, right? And it's written in a very simple format. And don't let simple mislead you to insignificant, because no way. Some of the most simple things in life are highly significant, like the act of breathing. Yeah, breathing is very simple for most people. Not for everybody, but for most people. Yeah, it's automatic. You don't exert effort to breathe, right? So, but it's very significant, right? So there is an example over here on how to generate the states, and I go through it rather quickly. Because FeelFulness is more conceptual, but Creating Ease will provides you with more details and more examples and more how to do this and how to do this. And here's an example. And here's the most important state that you could ever, if you like in Creating Ease, I'm presenting 5 basic states that if these are the only 5 states that you learn to generate and learn to practice and be that at all times, everything else follows. Because there are basic needs that everybody has. They have basic needs, and as humans, communities, city, countries, cultures, we all have similar needs as generating states. So it took me a while to ponder upon what would be the most common, familiar, basic, and most needed states when I came up with Creating Ease. So that's what I did that in Creating Ease. It's available in written form and audio. Not audio book, but the thought feeling practices are available in audio form. And FeelFulness book, it's also on my website. I made available a few FeelFulness practices. I believe I have like 3 or 4 techniques. Like if you get the book from my website, you're also going to have access to free 3 or 4 thought feeling practices. People don't know what to ask because sometimes I present things that are so simple, like here's the solution. And a lot of people kind of pause. It's like, oh, I have the solution? Well, yeah. Well, I've been looking for it 30 years. Well, here it is, right? So mostly the reader's reaction helped me come up with writing down some of the examples, which are harder to do in general terms, because when I'm face to face with someone, I know what they need to hear based on their processes. Like I said earlier, everybody has their own internal processes and they have patterns to it. And one of my talents is seeing and recognizing people's processes. It's not this is one of the hardest thing to. This is the most important thing when you work with people, when you work with clients. This is what we all need the most. How does someone processes things, right? So it's very unique and very individual. Erickson was very good at that, right? And he became famous for it. Milton Erickson is the father of Ericksonian hypnotherapy. He revolutionized hypnotherapy, and he utilized individual people's processes. He worked directly with the processing with the limbic language, otherwise known as neural language, and he used a lot of triplicates, a lot of word triangles. And he might be the very seed that created and made a basis for NLP, neuro-linguistic language programming, which is actually deprogramming. So yes, when I'm one-on-one with someone, there are similar patterns. I mean, as humans, we kind of have similar processes, but out of the general processes, there are sub-processes and sub-processes. So I am looking for how individual person's processes work at sub-layers, And once I have that information, I can guide them to their results much, much quicker.
You know, when I see people do neuro-linguistic stuff, I always wonder, which a lot of it came from Milton Erickson, them studying Milton Erickson. But I always wonder, are they putting people in a trance or not? Because they don't look like they are.
No, it's not. No, the neurolinguistic is very vast. There's a lot to it. There's intellectuality and there is practice to it, but there's something to be practiced. It comes down to a lot of techniques.
But what I wanted to know, just in terms of this, is this closer to what you're talking about? Because you're talking about generating states. Is that closer to the neuro-linguistic style or hypnotic?
None and both. Neither and both. There are neuro-linguistic techniques and there's hypnotic techniques, and then combining the two of them, you come up with feelfulness, because hypnotherapy doesn't teach you feelfulness. NLP doesn't teach you feelfulness. NLP, well, depending on how, I don't want to call it a science, but it is a science. Like with any discipline, is gonna give you a set of criteria and a set of not rules, but a set of criteria and definitions and layers and sub-layers. As a discipline, it's going to give you that. But feelfulness is not a discipline. It might become a discipline. I'm not intending for it to become a discipline. But it's not neurolinguistic, it's not hypnotherapy, it's not mindfulness, it's not meditation, but it's all of them. It's a little bit of all, and a lot of common sense and practicality, of course.